Event Horizon occupies a peculiar place in the landscape of sci-fi horror, a film that arrived amid late 90s cinematic optimism about space exploration, but chose to map a theological and visceral descent into something far darker than technological failure. Rather than treating space as a neutral backdrop for suspense, Event Horizon frames it as an elemental antagonist, a vacuum that not only kills, but can also strip meaning from existence and transform human bodies and minds into tableau of medieval torment. The result is a synthesis of Gothic architecture, Dantean imagery, cosmic physics, and practical body horror effects that continues to resonate with creators and audiences who prefer horror that both imagines and depicts profound transgression.
My God. What happened to your eyes?
My guy, we won't need eyes to see. I created the Event Horizon to reach the star.
Welcome to the cabin.
What was it you said?
The cabin of horror.
Is much
I don't
worse.
think so.
An artificial to another dimension. A dimension of pure chaos.
He's bleeding out.
Pure evil.
At the heart of the concept is a deliberately simple, effective transposition, an isolated environment with no escape in which a supernatural or metaphysical force preys upon the vulnerabilities of its occupants, allows Event Horizon to blend psychological terror with grotesque spectacle. The narrative architecture uses several converging metaphors: the ship as cathedral, the wormhole as a rite of passage or gateway to hell, and human guilt as the sacrificial currency the ship exploits. These metaphors are expressed visually and narratively in ways that are consistent and obsessional. The film repeats motifs, eyes rings, coffin-shaped doorways, Latin inscriptions, until they feel ritualistic. The ship design is a cornerstone of the movie's tone. The Event Horizon was constructed in story as the experimental result of a gravity drive meant to create an artificial black hole, allowing faster-than-light travel by creating a bridge through space-time. Production designers leaned heavily on Gothic cathedral motifs while building the interior and certain external forms of the vessel: vaulted corridors, circular galleries, buttress-like structural members, and ornamentation that evokes stone tracery appear alongside computer consoles and industrial piping. This fusion of ecclesiastical aesthetics with spacecraft engineering gives the interiors a sacramental quality. Passage through the ship often reads like processional movement through a corrupted church. The gravity drive itself visually resembles an eye, concentric rings, and a pupil-like aperture, which reinforces the film's recurring visual register of vision and seeing. Phrases in Latin over gateways and the use of liturgical cadences in some sound elements amplify the idea that the ship's architecture is not merely physical, but doctrinal, as if doctrine and physics were welded together and then used as a vector for corruption. Thematically, several influences are layered to create the film's mythic scaffolding. Dante's Inferno is invoked structurally. The ship's approach to the drive involves a sequence of tunnels and impediments that echo the circles of hell. Medieval torture iconography and the visual language of Christian martyrdom are repurposed into a futuristic context. Dental drills, clamps, sharp protrusions, and cruciform imagery become technological instruments rather than antique curiosities. Real-world maritime mysteries like the Mary Celeste provide a template for the ghost ship conceit. A vessel adrift with its crew missing is a problem that naturally compels investigation, and the leap the film makes, that a technological experiment opened a metaphysical doorway, transforms a classic mystery into theological catastrophe. The scientific vocabulary is used with an intriguing mixture of accuracy and poetic license. The term event horizon is borrowed from astrophysics, the boundary surrounding a black hole beyond which escape is impossible because the required escape velocity exceeds the speed of light. Movie logic amplifies this to metaphysical terms. Light and sight themselves are literally and symbolically trapped or rendered obsolete. The drive is described as generating a bridge into another region of space-time, and visual motifs imply that travelers who traverse it are entering a space where conventional sensory faculties and moral categories no longer apply. When one of the final lines asserts that, where we're going, we won't need eyes to see.
My God. What happened to your eyes?
My guy, we won't need eyes to see.
The the statement functions both as a literal description of a place without light and as an assertion of a perverse epistemology. The ship's worldview privileges other forms of perception, visions, compulsions, and corporeal revelation over empirical sight. Characterization in Event Horizon is organized around guilt and reparation. Members of the rescue crew are not blank archetypes, but people with specific failures, culpabilities, and unresolved losses. That moral liability allows the ship's manifestations to be targeted and intimate. Dr. William Weir's central trauma, his wife's death by drowning, is externalized throughout his scenes with water and reflective surfaces. Bathtubs, photos, and mirror-like monitors stage his grief. Captain Miller's concealed guilt over a past abandonment becomes the narrative engine behind his final sacrificial act. Other characters carry private shames: a nurse tormented by an absent child, a crew member haunted by surgical scars, a technician racked by memories of past negligence. The ship's manipulative power lies in externalizing these internal failures, presenting them as literal apparitions or coercive hallucinations that drive characters to self-destructive acts. In this sense, the ship acts as psychopomp and executioner simultaneously. It reveals what its victims dread and then orchestrates the punishment. Cinematography and production craft reinforce the film's thematic ambitions. Long single-take sequences and elaborate rotoscoped composites establish a sense of scale, while tight maintenance shafts and claustrophobic corridors recreate the tactile physicality of older horror films. Practical effects, heavy suits, magnetic boots, and cumbersome props are foregrounded rather than masked by digital trickery. The decision to favor tangible mechanical effects intensifies the tactile quality of violence. When an airlock opens or blood slicks a corridor, the audience is seeing something physically plausible rather than an abstract CGI flourish, and that plausibility increases the revulsion. Sound design complements the visuals. Low-frequency drones, metallic groans, and unsettling percussive textures emphasize the ship as a living mechanism with its own acoustical personality. Small diegetic details, such as a vintage-style wristwatch or a child's toy dropping from a console, act as prosthetic memories that anchor the human dimension amid the corrosive environment. Narratively, the film uses recovered footage and logs as an epistemic device to hint at the event horizon's prior history without over-explaining. Brief, frothing montages, edited to shock rather than to reveal, suggest that the ship's crew underwent progressive forms of mutilation, ritualistic behavior, and ritualized performances of pain. The missing footage, and the knowledge that additional, more explicit material was cut by studios, contributes to the movie's aura. The audience is forced to imagine transitions the film refuses to fully show. This restraint paradoxically magnifies horror. Suggested atrocity often erodes the viewer's sense of safe distance more effectively than explicit immersion. The motifs of sight and vision proliferate in subtle and overt ways. Monitors reflect faces that are not present. Characters stare into apertures that assume the geometry of eyes, and repeated reflections and close-ups of irises make sight itself suspect. The film stages a dialectic between light and darkness, water and fire, which becomes symbolic of opposing ontologies. Water motifs, bubbling drains, bathtubs, and drowned reflections associate with memory and suppressed grief. Fire motifs, burned corpses, literal conflagrations evoke destruction and punishment. The interplay suggests a cosmic dialectic where the ship leverages elemental oppositions to dissolve personal identity and moral certainty. Homages and intertextual gestures are abundant. Dinner scenes that mimic the polyglot discomfort of Alien, references to classic horror soundscapes, and production design cues that prefabricated later video game aesthetics. Magnetic boots and sealed suits anticipating the design of later horror game protagonists provide a lineage that extends through contemporary media. The film's influence is visible in subsequent survival horror titles. Oppressive corridors, anthropomorphic ship architecture, and iconography that blends religious symbology with industrial design recur across games and films inspired by Event Horizon's blueprint. By insisting that the encounter with the unknown will be both physically violent and spiritually invasive, the narrative avoids a neat binary between science and superstition, and instead proposes a synthetic horror unique to the liminal space between them. What do you think about the film? Does Event Horizon succeed more as cosmic horror, body horror, or both? For those who study the genealogy of contemporary horror media, Event Horizon represents an important node. A film in which production design, sound, and practical effects coalesced to produce a diasporic set of images that later proliferated in interactive and narrative forms, whether through mechanical suits and magnetic boots echoed in game character design, the architectural language of the haunted craft replicated in virtual levels, or the thematic preoccupation with guilt as the conduit for supernatural contagion. Event Horizon's visual and narrative lexicon continues to be reworked. As a specimen, it is neither pristine nor completely coherent. Pacing issues and uneven character development are legitimate critiques, but its aesthetic commitment renders it memorable. The film remains an instructive example of how to fuse disparate registers, medieval iconography, astrophysics, body horror, into a unified, if uncomfortable, cinematic experience. Subscribe to the Cabin of Horror for more long-form examinations of films and media that probe the boundary between the technological and the metaphysical.
I see.
We won't need eyes to see. I created the event horizon to reach the stars. She's gone much, much farther than that. She tore a hole in our universe, gateway into another dimension. Dimension of pure chaos. Pure evil. When she crossed over, she was just a shadow. But when she came back, she was alive.
Immense power to bend space-time. Look, it'll take the lowest about 1,000 years to tell you're a star. The event horizon will give you a day. If it works, come back, perfect safe.
Thanks for watching The Cabin of Horror. If you like this sort of content, be sure to comment your theories or scariest moments. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. And thank you for being part of our community.